Hey, welcome to the Cyber Savvy Woman, where women business owners reclaim their power in the digital world. We shatter the myth that cybersecurity is too complex to master and transform protection strategies into clear, actionable guidance. This is your digital empowerment sanctuary, where cyber fear becomes cyber confidence. Whether you're protecting client trust as a therapist or safeguarding financial data as an advisor, you'll hear from women founders who've conquered digital challenges and security experts who speak your language. Every woman leading a business deserves to feel unshakable in her digital decisions, no matter her technical background. Are you ready to stop letting cybersecurity intimidate you and start letting it elevate you? Here's your host, Rachele Schainker.
Welcome back to the Cyber Savvy Woman podcast, where we talk to smart, accomplished leaders about real stories behind their businesses, their growth, and how they're navigating technology, visibility, and change in today's digital world. I'm your host, Rachele Schainker, Silicon Valley technologist and owner of CMIT Solutions of San Mateo, an award-winning MSP. Today, we're joined by Hersh Rephun, founder of Yes Brand Builders, who helps experienced leaders clarify their authority, identity, and message before execution locks in and how the world perceives them. Hersh, welcome to the show.
Hey, Rachel, it's great to be here with you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. For listeners meeting you the first time, what do you actually do when you say you work with authority decision layer? I love that.
Well, yeah, and I the key word really there is decision layer, because it is so much about the decisions we make about our identity way before we put pen to paper, way before we buy ads or hire a marketing team or a publicist. So there's this kind of internal, external work that has to happen in order for us to make sure that at first contact, as soon as people see us in whatever place we're positioned, so let's say I work with an executive, a senior executive, they're at board meetings, they're on email, they're at conferences, they speak, they write, they publish. This is like 7 different places that they could conceivably put different parts of their personality, and a corporate infrastructure isn't going to account for the nuance of who a person is. They're just going to say you can't talk about this, or don't use this word, or use these word, or use these colors and this font. And what I've developed over the last several years is a kind of brand voice guide that really tailors to the person's category of one, for lack of a better word, because ultimately that's what each of us is. We're a category of one, but we can't do it if we're trying to fix it downstream in a conversation with someone, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, you talk about that working with leaders at the moment of their amplification. What does that turning point usually look like in real life? Like, what should we be reflecting on in ourselves? Like, oh, are we going to blow up in 2 seconds? Like, what does that look like?
Well, that's funny that you say that, because in a way, I mean, the good news is that this is often something that is more easily fixed than people realize, but it happens. It's visible because something is wrong. So, in other words, um, by and large, a client will come to me because there's a problem. Let's say that their calls with prospects or prospective partners or investors or whatever it might be are not going well. Something stalls. They're getting acknowledgement, nodding, good rapport, next steps, but things just kind of drag. They don't close. They don't happen. Something doesn't happen, or the repetition is starting to be visible to them. I realize every time I get on the phone with somebody, they ask me the same question, and I go over this, what I call this explanation tax of, like, explaining what I do, who I am, why I exist, and we get good at it is the problem. I'll talk to so many people, they're like, "Yeah, I always have to spend about 5, 7 minutes of, clarifying what I do and who I am, but I'm used to it as it comes with the territory. No, it doesn't.
Oh, it's interesting. Yeah. So note if that's your MO. Yeah.
Yeah, if you and people will say, "Oh, what kind of client should I be on the lookout for you?" And I say, "Well, if you know of someone who you really respect and you think they're super smart and they're really great at what they do, and their clients or their audience are really, really happy, but you just can't explain exactly what it is that they do, that might be someone who could benefit from working with me because that is a successful person's problem. We compensate for these things, so we're successful, but we're still not as successful or as happy as we could be.
Yeah, makes sense. Was there a moment in your own career where you realized perception and positioning mattered more than execution? Maybe how important that was? I mean, how did you kind of because it's a unique take. So how did you kind of come here?
Yeah, I suffered for decades. No, in truth, I did because it came to me. The funny thing was I've been doing what I'm doing for people for my whole career. I just wore a lot of different hats. So I was in PR, I was a screenwriter, I was a stand-up comedian. Stand-up comedy, you're sharing truths, you're helping people work through things with a sense of humor. Movies, you're telling stories that are parables or lessons. Public relations, you're sharing a narrative or amplifying a narrative. So I did all these jobs thinking that I was looking for the job title that would define me, that I was a thing looking for a job title. And what finally resonated for me was that this was about me fixing this signal, setting this signal upstream and saying, well, what who is Hersh? What is Hersh's signal that he's sending? And it doesn't matter whether I'm doing it in an article or I'm doing it on a video. Those things don't are not what define you. It's so simple once we recognize it, but we run around doing all this stuff. And I had that revelation. I was tired of explaining the various things that I can do, and not knowing who to, I would meet someone at a party. They love comedy. Well, now I'm a comedian, but that doesn't mean that that's what they need. That just means that's what I heard.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. You often say that urgency isn't survival, it's direction. Can you unpack that through a small business owner's lens, or what does that mean for us?
Well, small business owners will, nothing gets done if it's not urgent, right? But the fact that something's urgent is relative. It doesn't mean, I have like I have my best friend is my business partner in a lot of ventures, and his thing is that he's a fireman. He puts out fires. He owns stores, he owns real estate. Everything is about, not literally putting out fires, but putting out the handling the emergency, quote unquote. And when we started working together, it was like, "Oh my god, everything is not an emergency. If you do stuff in advance, it's not." So the urgency that I talk about is that if you do nothing, if you say nothing about your brand and you kinda let it take care of itself, the marketplace still makes a decision about you. People are still deciding what you are, who you are, what you're doing without you ever being, proactive about it. And and so it doesn't feel urgent to you because you're still doing your job and you're still making money and building your business. But in the world out there, you're missing opportunities. So the urgency is you can either address this issue and fix it and seize all the opportunities in front of you, or you can slowly let this burn kind of churn until eventually you're like, wait a minute, why am I only doing this? Why did that person never call me? Why did they work with that person? So it's not surviving, like I need this or my business I will go out of business. It isn't that kind of thing. It's how long do you want to keep spinning your wheels on this issue?
Yeah, of making sure your time is of value and what you're doing are high value activities. I That's something I'm always like checking myself, like, should I be doing this or should someone else be doing this? Or yeah, that makes sense. Why do you think founders, they'll build the website, they'll launch the marketing, and then they kind of come up with what their message is? Why do you think humans want to like build the things and then, maybe they don't always have their message really thought out first, you know?
We are very eager to get to the finish line. That is not at all a bad thing. But if you think about it, if we go back to, prehistoric days and we were hunting and gathering and trying to survive, trying to avoid getting killed and just eat and get food for our families, whatever it might be, it's like, yes, the most important thing is coming home with the fish, but if you just start with looking out your window for fish, you're you've missed the strategy, the whole strategy part.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of us rush down to the stream because we're so hungry for fish that we just don't think about the strategy. What is the weapon we're going to use? What are the tools? Where are the fish? And and the thing that's different about calibrating the interpretation of your message is that it's possible to run down to the stream with a lot of stuff without doing that. There's no safeguard to make sure that you really develop your category of one in a successful manner because it doesn't stop you from eating. But you get down there and as a client recently told me, spent 25, $30,000 on ads on social media with 0 basically return because not because the advertising strategy was wrong, but the upstream calibration was simply not tuned in to what the audience needed to know about him.
Yeah. Interesting. So I mean, this kind of leads into my next question is how can a business owner tell if their brand story is misaligned with where they're going next? Like how should we be like checking ourselves?
Yeah, and Rachel, you say something really important in there about where you're going next, because a lot of we're evolutionary, we're always growing, we're advancing in our careers and businesses and our image, and a lot of times the marketplace or the awareness out there hasn't caught up, and unless we send the signal that we're doing something different, they won't know it, and they'll still think we're doing this. Um, and what happens is, a business owner might not send that signal. And so what they have to keep an eye on is when people are referring them, talking about them, when they're looking at their visibility, not from the point of view of how many likes did I get, but from the point of view of what are the comments that I'm getting? What did this person call and ask for? What am I talking with this person in this conversation? What are they thinking I am? What do they think I am? Because a lot of times, especially in sales, you're thinking, what do they want? Am I giving them what they want or am I giving them what they need? We're not thinking, what do they think I am? Who do they think I am? And we need,
That happened to me recently. Somebody introduced me as an IT consultant,
yeah. Oh, tell me.
and I was like, no, we're a MSP, managed service provider, a team of 10. Like, I mean, sure, I can consult, but and he knows me very well. It's like we're business advisors. And I was like, oh, that was interesting. I was like, noted.
Yeah, well, I'm interested in this though, because the fact that it's someone who knows you well is one of the because it's crazy to think that even a close friend or colleague or, I mean, I went through this with my mom. My mom couldn't explain what I did, and that was because I was doing so many eclectic things. I was writing screenplays, I was a publicist for the commercial production world. She could never get her head around, like, the fact that I was on stage.
What were you doing day to day? Yeah,
but I was also doing, like, other people's PR, like, "What are you? Just make it easy for your mother,"
hilarious. Yeah.
you know? But it's interesting. So how did that tell me how that conversation unfolded a little bit.
Oh, well, he was introducing me to a mutual person. We were at a networking event, and, I did correct him right there quickly and was like, "No, I own a MSP, managed service provider." So, I kinda corrected him, and he kind of I think he noted it, but, like, we'll have another conversation at another time. Just it was just curious. I was like, "Oh, is that what you think of me?" Like, even though he's a client of ours, he knows I have a team, and it's like it was just curious.
Well, one thing that so do you think that the person he was introducing you to is, like, well aware of what an MSP is?
Possibly. You know what's so funny? I don't even remember who he was introducing me to. Like, to me, my only takeaway from that was what he said, how he
What do you think I am? Yeah.
exactly. I don't even remember. I mean, no, I think the guy was insurance. I mean, it's possible. It's possible, and I did, as I kind of corrected him, explained what we do. So, but yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. A lot of people don't know when I throw that term around MSP. They don't know what that is. So, I mean, that's a fair point. But I did kind of expand on that to the person. But it was interesting. It's funny.
And also, if you think about it, this is another reason why I advocate so strongly for that category of one. And it's not easy, it doesn't always come naturally, and it's not about clever monikers or I'm the this lady or I'm the this person. That works sometimes, it does work with some people. But really, when you get that clarity, and you nail that down, it's really easier for the person who knows you, let's say, and it wouldn't even it would naturally start to happen, but the person will think about what's easiest for your friend. What's easiest for your friend is what's easiest to remember. And so they would say, Rachel is the MSP blank, the MSP thing, this is she does that because MSP is a category of its own, but it's there's nothing distinctive about it per se.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you had uh, a real, if you had a real through line that you felt was a signal that you could send out to the world, no matter what, he might pick up that signal. And even people who don't know what it means would pick up on the signal because it would be so closely associated with you. So it's not 100% his fault, but what a jerk. I'm just kidding.
No, no, totally, but it was interesting. It was interesting that, that just happened. I was like,
Yeah, but it is common. It is common.
yeah. So for small let's talk a little bit about being relatable and community. Small business owners sometimes can feel isolated during transitions. How do you help leaders kind of navigate with those in between phases?
The in between phase is a real interesting one because again, we're often in a there's two speeds. We're in a rush or like a lot of my clients are like, well, I just want to take a little time and I want to see what I'm going to do next. I don't want, I want to be deliberate. I have a little room, have a little buffer. And that's where I remind them that even during this downtime, even during this buffer, the marketplace is evaluating you. And it doesn't mean that you're a household name or everybody in your business even knows who you are, but the marketplace, to the extent that people are coming across you, is evaluating you. So it's really important to take a little time and think about the things that are true about where you're headed and start shaping your profile. And by that, I mean all the points, all the touch points, including how you talk to people, so that even in the interim, you have a new story that because as you know, a lot of us will get in those conversations. Well, I recently left such and such and I was at well, now we're already in the middle of a story that not only it's a story, it doesn't even matter.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's the rear view. Yeah.
I left. I'm not even there anymore. If we take that breath and say, "Yes, I know I," because part of it's procrastination. We have to admit that part of it is we're just putting it off because we don't have to make that decision yet. But there's an interim step that is just as legitimate as wherever you end up, that is where you are right now. And it's important to calibrate to that. And again, if you think of your career as a signal and a through line, you know, just imagine that wherever you are on that trajectory, you should be clear and solid and um and firm so that the audience does not get confused.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. You know, you shared, you said associations kind of harden once the execution begins. Can you explain what that means kind of in simple terms for entrepreneurs? How can we, leverage that thought?
Well, just similarly to the what I said about the marketplace making decisions about you, if you amplify the wrong impression of who you are, that impression tends to calcify out there, and it's a lot harder, let's say, to you know change a painting when it's already dry, right? And if you just leave it alone, it gets hard, and that's what people think. So, for example, if your friend had said, "Oh, Rachel's an IT consultant," and you thought to yourself, "All right, who cares? I don't, whatever," you know, then that hardens because that person that just heard that thinks now you are an IT consultant. Now all of a sudden, for all you know, you're gonna get phone call, you're gonna get somebody and it just kind of exacerbates the situation. So the calcification is that, again, if we're not proactive, if we don't stay on top of it, it's going to settle as something that we didn't mean.
Yeah. Hmm. What is one question every founder can ask themselves before amplifying their brand or platform? Is there a way that we should be checking? Like, okay, so I know I'm like, even with my podcast, right? It's like, okay, this is going to get out there into the ethers, you know, do I, and that's something I've kind of like, my MO sometimes is just like, get it out, right? Just do it, right? Not overthink it. But maybe, if somebody is launching a podcast or launching a business, is there something that, one kind of key question that will help us amplify that signal to make sure we're doing it correctly or best?
Yes, I would say ask yourself, what is my category of one? What am I doing here that no one else does? And if I need to go deeper, what makes me different as a professional in this category? What makes me different from anyone else in the world doing what I'm doing? And if you just get the answer to that question, it'll change your mindset whether you change what you write or what you say. It'll tune you into yourself much better.
Yeah. And then what if somebody has like problems getting there, like figuring out what, who they are, what their category one is? Is there a way, do you take them through a process of like helping them kind of like, or is it like journaling or, like, can you help somebody get there and really figure it out and fine tune it? Is that part of what you're doing? Or do you want them to come with that already prepared?
No, no, there and the good thing is that you really don't need to prepare for any of this work, let's call it. And it isn't really work that you need to do necessarily, but I have created on my website um a couple of graphics that explain how this kind of moves through your consciousness a little bit. So I think it starts with recognition. You have a recognition that there's some kind of problem or hiccup in how you're presenting yourself. You're not waking up and saying, "I should be making more money." You're waking up and saying, "I'm tired of repeating myself," or "I'm tired of not, have being introduced properly." And there's recognition. And then there's cost. It's like, well, what is it costing me? Time? Is it costing me money? Is it costing me opportunity? And you can figure those things out on your own. And then it's, what is the missing ingredient that I'm getting hung up on? Well, there is, on my website, I have it's not a di it's I have a couple of quizzes that are, just kind of free for people who wanna go and try quizzes, but, um but I do a diagnostic that's more of a like an initial engagement where I'll actually walk them through, what may be causing interpretation problems, and it starts to kinda open the mind a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, another way of thinking about themselves. Are most people open to it by the time they get to you, or have you ever had anyone that's kind of resistant or, like, just has a blind spot and not necessarily, you know, seeing them, or are most people, like, ready when they start work with you?
No, well, yes and no.
All of the above, probably, yeah.
I mean, yeah, they're ready. The ones that call up and are or that I'm introduced to and right away it clicks, they just happen to already have recognized it and associated the cost with it, and they don't wanna continue to pay that. So, they are ready. A lot of other times, people are our minds are a funny thing. They're self-solvers. They wanna try everything in the book themselves before they admit that something needs outside help. And the very nature of this work is that perspective is key, and it's very hard for us to, uh, look at ourselves from inside the jar, so to speak, and really figure out what's going on the label out there. We can't do it. And so there are a lot of people who just aren't ready yet, for a lot of reasons of their own. Some have the self-sabotage, the fear of success, what happens if I get the job? What happens if I win the account? Um, and that's a mindset thing. And I always say I know a couple of good mindset coaches, and but I'm not a mindset coach. I'm an advisor, but you need to come to terms with some stuff.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. You shared how you run, multiple podcasts. How has podcasting shaped your business model and your visibility? Does it amplify your signal?
Yes, it does, and and that's a good thing and a challenge or a responsibility. But the first thing in terms of how it affected me is I owe my every all the work I'm doing now and all the amazing clients I'm working with, I owe that to podcasting because I started my Truth Tastes Funny podcast, um, right at the end of the pandemic because I was feeling so detached and disconnected from the world. But that's how I started to meet. It was just about surviving and thriving in a chaotic world. It was a funny, fun, and also a lot of trauma, like dealing with people's trauma, but having a sense of humor about life, um, and meeting all these people who were entrepreneurs and survivors of various trauma and all this stuff. And I realized, I want to work with people one on one in my own business instead of working with consumer brands. And so I started working with personal brands, and that was the genesis of all this. By the way, the Truth Tastes Funny podcast is now evolving to where, um, it is going to be not less of an interview show and more me and a guest co-host looking at a topic and seeing how we each interpret the topic differently. In other words, you can look at the same exact picture, the same exact headline, the same exact article, and have two very disparate, reactions to it. And the lesson there is the aha moment of, wow, I guess the way I see the world is not how everybody sees the world. Hence, the way I see myself is probably not how other people see me, and so it becomes more about this whole interpretation dance that we've been talking about. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's great because people do need to, be able to accept somebody can see something differently or, and find that commonality and that's a great practice. I love that pivot. That'll be I'll have to check that out.
Thank you.
You also shared with me how you're not naturally a techie, but how do you leverage technology strategically in your business? How do you use it?
Yeah, and this is always a fun question because I'm definitely not a techie, but um, I had a business partner years ago who was helping me set up my office. He wasn't my business partner at the time. He was just a friend, and he was uh I wouldn't say an IT consultant. He was an informatics specialist was his field.
Yeah, right. Data viz. Yeah,
But but he came into my office and was on the floor, like, hooking up all the computer and the modem and all the other stuff, and I was like, "Oh, man, thank you so much for doing this." And he's like, "You could do it too if you were willing to get down on the floor and do it. I could tell you what to do. You're not incapable of doing it, you just don't want to." And he said, "And if I were you, I would ask me what I'm doing because this skill of being unafraid of technology will serve you well." And it did because it triggered like you ask, how do I use technology? Well, as a very simple one, let's take podcasting. Now, I don't do all this stuff myself anymore, but I know how to set up recordings. I know how to edit sound. I know how to edit video. I know how to I know how to use AI to generate content based on giving it certain guidance, you know? So understanding it as a utility, I do all of that. Um, I have I guess in terms of bookkeeping and things like that, I use stuff, but I also am more hands-on with things like that. Like, I still like pencil and paper. I still like doing numbers. I still like doing things like that without hyper teching it.
exactly. Yeah, over engineering. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly, over engineering. And so I don't like to overproduce, so to speak. Um, but, I think technology is very much, integrated into what I do, and I see that as increasing simply because as I scale, it's going to be technology that helps me scale, not manpower. And that's not because of using AI instead of people. It's simply replicating what I do and using my IP, turning my IP into something that can passively be marketed is simply a technological feat. It's not about anything else.
Yeah, interesting. Are you building an app right now?
I haven't started yet because what one thing that happens, and you can speak to this, is because things move so quickly, if I had started a year ago, building the app, I mean, one of my colleagues, did something for himself that was far surpassed whatever I thought I was going to do. And I was like, okay, well, but if I do that now and invest in that now, I don't know whether that's going to become, obsolete or yeah, but I'm not doing it yet.
Obsolete. Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I was helping, yeah, a few like 4 or 5 years ago. I was helping somebody build out an app, and I come from big data, large data, like data warehouse, like table, like that's my background. And I was like, oh yeah, that's what we're going to build for this app. And one of the contributors was like, oh, what about AI? And I was like, no, no, no. And now here we are 4 or 5 years later. And like, I'm like, oh my God, AI would do it like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, and we were going to build this huge thing, and it's wild. And that's, I kind of poo-pooed it, but I was like, wow, I clearly did not see the on-ramp of what was coming 4 years later. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I don't think that that stuff is predetermined, so it's very hard to see it.
Yeah, unless you're deep in it, and I wasn't. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so much of it is what are people gonna do? How are people gonna react? What's going to sell? What's not what are people gonna like or be afraid of or reject? There's a lot of variables. It's hard to see the future.
yeah, definitely. Well, Hirsch, we've come to the part of the podcast where a quick little rapid fire. I'm gonna ask you some questions Just share with me what comes top of mind. So personal brand or company brand?
Personal brand or company brand, both because they feed one another. You know, you need them both. They're two personalities.
And podcast or written content?
Mm. Podcast because if you think about it, podcast is really for the audience. I think the written content is first and foremost for the writer and then later appreciated by the audience.
Oh, I like that. Clarity first or speed first?
Uh, Clarity first. I have to go with clarity first because of what I do. But but it doesn't have to be perfect. Perfection is not clarity.
Yeah, 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 fair. AI tool or human intuition?
Human intuition because that is what AI needs in order to function properly.
Yeah, yeah. Zoom call or a voice note?
Wow, that's funny. I think voice note. Voice note is fine. I should use more voice notes.
Yeah. And then LinkedIn or website authority?
Ooh, website authority. Yeah, owned media. Always drive people to your owned media.
And finally, what does being cyber savvy mean to you?
Being cyber savvy to me means that that you don't sell yourself short, that you realize that the world is a big and growing and expansive and interconnected place, and the more you have mastery over it, the better you can maneuver within it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hersh, this was such a thoughtful conversation. I really appreciate how you framed authority not as like marketing noise, but as intentional direction, especially for leaders who are about to amplify their message or their visibility. For our listeners, if you're interested in learning more about Hersh and finding his website with those little quizzes that we can take, please be sure to check out our show notes. And for our listeners, thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Hersh, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
The Cyber Savvy Woman podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Hey, thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.